Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Kareem. My name is Shahid Rahman, and I am the Executive Director of American Muslim Institution, AMI. We are so glad to have all of you join us in this holy month, a month of reflection, patience, and charity. As we now enter our second Ramadan in this age of COVID, reflection and patience have never been at all-time highs. And we have seen our Muslim American community live up to their reputation as the most charitable of people. And I know you will be the most charitable of people again today. Despite the pandemic and the challenges our community has faced and our organization has faced, we have continued to persevere and work toward improving the image of Muslims and continue to fight Islamophobia. By that token, we have worked to build a platform for American Muslim journalists and aspiring journalists. Since our last major program in January, we have connected with approximately 100 journalists to create and discuss ways to not only improve the image of Muslims, but also bring these American Muslim journalists together. In that spirit, we have hosted an event featuring the future of journalism, the up-and-coming Muslim American stars in their industry to discuss where they believe the industry is going. As recently as last month, we've organized a conversation with more seasoned journalists to discuss human rights. We're also excited to host NPR's Tom Gelton and Asmauddin next month to discuss the politics of religious vulnerability and the media's impact on it. In 2 months, we plan to host approximately 20 students from all over the country to connect with journalists and experts in building their portfolios and networks. Today, you will hear from a cadre of speakers who will share their reflections on Ramadan, discuss our important work, and the necessity of supporting institutions that work to improve the image of American Muslims and continue to combat Islamophobia. We'll hear from Dr. Dalia Fahmy, professor at Long Island University who specializes on Islamophobia. And we'll hear from Dr. Muzammil Siddiqui, the former president of ISNA, and finally Dr. Tarek Al-Gawari, the resident scholar at ICCT Mosque in Montgomery County. As we get the program started, I am honored and privileged to have the opportunity to introduce our board chair, Dr. Akilur Rahman. For those of you in the DC, you know him very well, but from those of you from the rest of the country, I'll condense his bio into a couple of key highlights. Dr. Rahman, in his esteemed business career, founded a publicly traded biotech company. In addition, he's patented cancer-treating drugs. While extremely successful in the biotech industry, he has continued to improve the lives of his community, especially the Muslim American community. He has established the Montgomery County Muslim Foundation. Dr. Rahman, the floor is yours.
Dear friends of AMI, Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Kareem. We are in the month of blessings and reflection. The whole month of Ramadan, Allah sends us blessing. When we read Quran, when we do Salat, and when we give charity or Zakat to our fellow Muslims, Allah sends us blessing. It is really heartening and satisfactory to see how American Muslims give the Zakat and charity in the month of Ramadan as well as throughout the whole year. Traditionally, most of the Muslims' charity goes to conventional institutions like masajid and those organizations which are helping Muslims overseas by financial means. Organizations like AMI deserve all the support from our Muslim brothers. AMI in the last 5 years has been struggling very hard to remove the Islamophobia and to control the spread of this Islamophobia throughout the country. We do it through various ways. We do it through the press and the Muslim journalists around, and we use them effectively to give the message what we have against the Islamophobia in America. We try hard to increase the Muslims' stature in this country, in this society, and I think we are quite successful in that. But organizations like AMI need all the support throughout the year to end this cause. Today, we have Dr. Tariq Al-Gawari with us. He is a very renowned scholar. He was trained in Al-Azhar, and then he got his PhD from Princeton University, New Jersey. He is a master in Hadith, Fiqh, and other aspects of our religion. In ICCP, Islamic Community Center of Potomac, he is the resident scholar and imam in performing our religious duty in this center. Without any further delay, I would like Dr. Tariq Al-Gawari to give his talk. Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everyone. Inshallah everyone's doing well and staying safe. I wanted to speak very briefly about the blessed month of Ramadan. As we know, this is one of the peak times in our liturgical calendar, even though the month of Ramadan is the 9th month in the Islamic calendar, and the Islamic year ends with the Hajj season. Of course, Hajj being the ultimate, pinnacle of the calendar. But most people don't go to Hajj every year, as we know. It's only an obligation to go once in a lifetime if one is physically and financially able. But fasting is something that is incumbent upon us wherever we are, whenever we are. So therefore, it really is the celebration that focuses the whole year for us, our whole liturgical year, that is. As we know, Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O you who believe, fasting is prescribed upon you, is written upon you, is incumbent upon you, as it has been on those before you. And in that first part of the verse, we are reminded that fasting is a universal act of worship. There is no religious tradition that I know of, that I've studied, except that there is some type of fast. There is some type of withholding in order to achieve some type of spiritual benefit. The fast might look different, it might have different names, it might have different conditions, it might last for different periods of time, but there is no religious tradition that does not have some type of fast. And Allah Ta'ala reminds us of that in the beginning of the verse, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. The purpose therefore is in order for us to arrive at this awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we can be cognizant of Allah ta'ala, we can be aware, we can be present with the knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there, what we call taqwa. In a hadith in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sought to articulate what taqwa was, he said, "At-taqwa ha-huna, at-taqwa ha-huna, at-taqwa ha-huna." Taqwa is a matter of the heart, it's here. It's something that's on the inside. It's not measurable, but it is something that is on the inside. And therefore, in this verse, even though we say it every year, and even though we always talk about this verse every year when we come to talk about Ramadan, it's quite profound that in this second part of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indicating to us that there is a relationship between the act of fasting and our spiritual wellness and our spiritual heart. The ulama of Islam, they've come to understand that the human heart, the heart not being the physical heart, but here meaning obviously the spiritual heart of the seat of intellect, that the heart of the human being has two doors. It has a door that is open to creation. It has a door that perceives the world around it. It interacts with the people around it. It takes in color and light and sound and food and drink, emotions, etc. It's what we use what we're using right now to be able to communicate with one another. And then there's also another door, a door that opens to the celestial realms. So in our cosmology, we believe that there is the created world, what we call al-mulk. The created world is simply everything that we see around us, everything that we can perceive. And there is the unseen part of the created world, what we call al-malakut. Sometimes we just translate it as the celestial world. It's the world of angels, the world of qadar, things that we believe exist as believers, but we will not necessarily be able to perceive them 100% in this life, and in the life to come, inshallah, we will. So the heart, therefore, has these two doors. One, you can almost think about it as one being horizontal and one being vertical. Now, the thing about these doors, the ulama discovered that when one door closes, the other door tends to open a little bit more. Usually, throughout the year, at least 11 months out of the year, the door to creation, the door to the dunya, the door to the world around us is open. It's our normal default. But by that happening, the door to the celestial realm, the door that can receive spiritual inspiration, etc., it's a little bit closed. Not completely, because we pray and we make dua and we do dhikr and read Quran. We might, fast the odd day here and there to make up, or, for celebration purposes, holidays, etc. But for the most part, that's sort of our normal default. Ramadan flips that. And it allows the door to the dunya to close more than it usually is, in order for it to receive more spiritual insight and communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By reducing our food and drink, we inherently become more pensive. We inherently become less talkative. We inherently become more spiritual, as it were. And therefore, when we do that, the other door is open wider and we are receiving. So while the body might starve for a set number of hours, the heart is thriving, the heart is feasting. Ramadan is the feast of the heart, even though it is the fast of the body. And that is why people like Imam al-Ghazali and Abu Tayyib al-Makki and others that talk about these kind of spiritual insights, they always remind us that there are levels of fasting. The goal of fasting is not just to be hungry and thirsty all day, because you can do that and do everything else wrong and not end up with anything from your fast other than you are hungry and thirsty. And that's essentially a paraphrasing of a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But rather, the point of the fast is that the not eating and not drinking triggers us to be more pensive, triggers us to be more contemplative, triggers us to want to make more dhikr, to read more Quran, etc., so that we can turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That's why Allah ta'ala says that. That's how the taqwa is recharged and the taqwa is boosted in the month of Ramadan, because the act of fasting segues into the heart being more aware, more active, etc. So it really is an amazing opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity because if you understand the goal, the bigger vision of why you're fasting, if you understand what's happening while you're fasting, then almost you anticipate and you look forward to the fast, because you look forward to experiencing that type of spiritual change in you. Many people in the fasting month, they'll receive a rush of creativity, a rush of inspiration, a rush of insight. Day after day, night after night, as they get used to more to the state of fasting, and then they turn more to the Quran, or they're listening to the Quran, or they're reading. Even if it's something that they always read every day, they might get that burst of insight, that burst of light. And if you've experienced that, and I hope inshallah everyone experiences that this year, it's really hard to articulate into words the joy that you feel from that feeling. And that's why fasting is something that we get excited about, and it's really a celebration. Even though the Eid is the official holiday of Ramadan, throughout the Muslim world, Ramadan itself, it's like a whole month of festivities. Where does this culture of festivities of Ramadan come from? It comes from what we're talking about right now. It's something that we honor and we look forward to. So that's a little bit about the fasting, and hopefully just some nuggets of things to think about of how we can make more out of our fasting. Ramadan is also the month of the Quran. It is the month in which the Quran was first revealed. It is the month in which the Quran's revelation was complete. It's the month in which the Prophet ﷺ reviewed the Quran with Gabriel twice, etc., in the final year of his life, ﷺ. And it is a month in which we turn to the Quran. Many of the ulama will close all of their study books and all of the projects that they're working on except for the Quran during the month of Ramadan. So it is a month for us to focus on the Quran as much as we can, whether it be to listen to it, whether it be to read it, whether it be to recite it. All of those are approaches that we can have towards the Quran. And in our mosque community in Potomac, Maryland, alhamdulillah, we have a program in which every night we have some small reflections to help the community, give them some of those nuggets to reflect on the Quran. It is a time where we celebrate the fact that we have this revelation, that we have this book, that it is preserved, that it is intact, that it continues to guide us, etc. So it's also a month in which we look towards the Quran. And then lastly, I would say that Ramadan is also a month of charity. The Prophet ﷺ was described as being the most generous of people, but he was even more generous than his normal self in the month of Ramadan. So in the month of Ramadan, many people save their charitable giving to the month so that they do it in the month of Ramadan because the good deeds are compounded and because of the fast and all of that. It is also the month of charity, and this is a charity event aimed at this purpose, targeting all of these meanings that we've been talking about. So this is the time to be generous. This is the time to display that generosity, and this is a sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ was and is our example. He gave to the point that he feared neither poverty nor need. He was giving as if he had an endless supply of surplus. This is how his enemies described him. They found it very strange. He just kept giving and giving and giving in such a way as if he has an endless surplus or reserve. That is the bar that we really have for generosity. So please think about that and reflect on that. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I pray everyone is well. I hope to see everyone soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Tariq. Thank you for reminding us of the importance of Ramadan and the importance of giving and charity. At this time, I'd like to share a quick video that highlights where our organization has been and where we are going with your support.
Muslim community is part and parcel of the American scene. This is our country. We pay taxes. We should be involved in the shaping of the American landscape.
American Muslim Institution was founded in 2015 by a group of prominent Muslim American business people, scientists, and former government officials to combat Islamophobia stemming from the 2016 presidential election. We were encouraged and supported by our community to promote a positive perspective of Muslims. We traveled throughout the country to introduce AMI and the importance of American Muslim engagement. Changing perceptions requires building a network of American Muslims to connect and amplify our voices, stories, and narratives. AMI's actions and initiatives have focused on connecting with media and engaging with elected officials. Since 2015, AMI has been at the front lines of working to understand the challenges facing the Muslim American community and improve their image by working with allies and stakeholders. In 2018, we partnered with New America to better understand the challenges facing the Muslim community, and we've had important discussions on the role of online hate. We work with the National Association of Broadcasters to create a style guide for journalists covering Muslims and other people of faith. Working directly with journalists, we realized the importance of creating a platform to connect media professionals and journalists to share, connect, and disseminate their truths. In addition to our work with journalists, we are continuing to invest our time in the next generation of media professionals. We designed a fellowship program to connect Muslim American students with institutions and thought leaders to provide insights, advice, and inspiration. We have organized media trainings for our community to better amplify their voices. We have also been cognizant of all the recent challenges our country has faced, and as such, we have organized webinars, briefings, and meetings to provide valuable resources to community members by connecting them directly with elected officials. We have also recognized the efforts and work done by all those on the front lines of the COVID-19 virus, and we continue to build bridges with marginalized communities to tackle racism. Since our foundation, we have worked to connect our community, amplify our voices, and change the narrative on Islam. Research has shown the overwhelming majority of coverage of Muslims is negative, magnifying stereotypes about Muslims. For this reason, we are investing resources to tell our stories in a way that represents facts, diversity, contributions, history, and the promise of the Muslim community. In order to tell the stories of American Muslims, our organization is providing resources and information to the individuals and institutions that disseminate information and shape public opinions. As part of this effort, we have a 5-part strategy that includes identifying and creating a coalition of American Muslim journalists, creating panels, events, and conversations that create the intellectual and social context by which information is shared and delivered. Through these journalists and events, we plan to connect with other prominent journalists so they know us. We also want to encourage the next generation of American Muslims to enter into the fields of media and journalism. And as we build our capacity, we plan to create a professional resource center that journalists and anchors can tap into. We believe we are well positioned to engage the media by connecting with and forming connections between a growing and diverse community of American Muslims in the media. We have hosted a series of programs and convenings over the last few years that has built a strong track record. We ask for your support, contributions, and well wishes as we continue on this effort to build into this space.
As you can see from the previous video, we have accomplished a great deal, and we can continue to do so with your support. That's why I'd like to ask you again, please consider donating to AMI and supporting our important work. At this moment, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce another founding board member of AMI, Ambassador Islam Siddiqui, who is the president of the institution. For those of you not familiar with him, Ambassador Siddiqui has served a long and illustrious career in government, achieving the rank of ambassador. He was the chief agricultural negotiator under the Obama administration and the undersecretary for marketing and regulatory programs in the Department of Agriculture in the Clinton administration. Both those positions made him the highest ranking Muslim in both administrations. We're so lucky to have someone like him offering his leadership, advice, and experience to this organization. Ambassador Siddiqui, it's nice to have you on.
Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Kareem. As you heard from Imam Tariq Al-Gawari, Ramadan is the month of compassion, fasting, charity, and forgiveness. All of us are blessed in the US and donate to many deserving causes every month and throughout the year. Please keep American Muslim Institution in your list of charitable giving, whether you donate $5, $10, $25, or $100. And you can donate either one-time donation or on a monthly basis. AMI is a charitable or tax-deductible organization by the IRS as a 501c organization. Without your financial support, AMI cannot continue to its important work in terms of countering Islamophobia, building bridges with other minority communities, because it is important for us to work with other communities, whether it be the Latin American communities or the African American community leaders or the Jewish community. As minorities in America, we face similar problems throughout the year, and sometimes these problems have been very much massive, as it was the case in the last 4 years. In talking to LULAC, which is the largest and oldest Latin American organizations of Latinos, we found out that problems they face during the last 4 years of Trump administrations were even worse than what the Muslim Americans have faced in America. So therefore, it makes sense for us to continue to build these bridges. And because I believe that an attack on one religion, whether it's on the places of worship or our people, is an attack on all religions. Therefore, we have to stand together in solidarity, work together, and it's very important that you continue to support In addition to whatever we do in terms of supporting other charities for education or other feeding programs, AMI deserves your support in terms of your charitable giving, so please donate generously. Now it's my privilege and honor to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Dalia Fahmy. She's an associate professor of political science at the Long Island University in New York. Among many subjects she teaches there include world politics, international relations, Islam, and democracy. Dr. Fahmy is also a visiting scholar at Rutgers University's Center for Genocide and Human Rights. She's a regular speaker on many TV networks in the US and Al Jazeera and other networks around the world. She's also a prolific author of many, many articles. In recent years, she has written 4 books which have been the subject of the rise and fall of Muslim Brotherhood, the future of political Islam, Arab Spring, and international relations. Dr. Fahmy is very much a speaker which we sought out around the world when it comes to on the Islamophobia. So we are actually privileged to have her as a speaker this evening to talk about Islamophobia and its implications for all of us. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Fahmy.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Siddiqui, for that generous introduction. And thank you all for having me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, when we look out at our political and social landscape, quite often the future looks bleak. And if there's anything that's been describing the United States in the past couple of years, it's been hate. Over the past few years, hate-filled groups have emerged on the scenes, from the white nationalist movement, the international white power movement, anti-Black racists, Islamophobes, anti-Semites, and the list goes on. And the disturbing truth is that this has been amplified, normalized, and increasingly institutionalized here in the United States and throughout the world. It's not just attacks on famous individuals, for example, on Representative Ilhan Omar, who was Black and a former refugee, and has endured a campaign of hate and defamation, even having her life regularly threatened. But go to the average Muslim American student, child. 1 in 4 Muslim children has been the victim of bullying in the past few years. According to the FBI, there has been a 17% increase in Islamophobic hate crimes every year for the past 5 years, a 17% compounded increase. And this has been consistent in the past couple of years, stating, according to the FBI, that this has been one of the most anti-Muslim time periods in American history. Attacks on mosques are often the symbols that we use to measure Islamophobia. Have there been attacks on mosques? But this is quite limited. Beyond just the desecration of mosques, increasingly the attacks have been on individuals, members of the Muslim community, women who wear headscarves, or Sikh men who wear turbans, mistaken as Muslims. And when we think about the attacks on the symbols of Islam, these symbols, mosques, headscarves, turbans, the attack is not just on the individuals. The attack aims to dehumanize. And that's what we're talking about today, the dehumanization of Islam and Muslims, how it happens and why it's so predominant. Today, it's predominant in everyday political discourse. Think about what we saw in the past 5 years. Nationwide anti-Islam rallies, controversies surrounding mosque zonings, the illegal surveillance of MSAs, attempts to pass anti-Sharia legislation in the run-up to an election in 24 states, the arrest of young people with nothing other than, for example, a boy with a clock, the vitriol that came out of the 2016 Republican primary that fed into what we're talking about today. It seems that the language around Muslims being trusted as American citizens continue to rise. And according to Gallup, 48% of Muslim Americans say that they have experienced racial or religious discrimination in this time period. And unfortunately, we have seen the end result of this. We've seen the execution-style murders of 3 young people in North Carolina, the burning down of an Islamic school in Houston, and when 2 young people were asked in Michigan if they were Muslim and they responded in the affirmative, they were stabbed repeatedly. And just a few blocks from my university, when a Muslim man was asked, "Are you Muslim? Are you Arab?" And he responds, yes, he was repeatedly stabbed in front of his wife and child. Political campaigns, including language that, for example, the United States is a Judeo-Christian nation, indicating that Islam has no presence here, or that Muslims can't be trusted, or that Muslims should be excluded from political positions, cabinet positions, especially in the last administration. Essentially, there were several individuals in the run-up to not the last election, but the one before that, that were talking about a country, our country, that should exclude Muslims from the definition of what it means to be American. I remember seeing this come firsthand in 2015. 2015, during President Obama's State of the Union address, when he states the United States is a nation that will not tolerate anti-Semitism. Now, of course, the entire congressional body stands up and applauds, rightfully so. But in his next breath, he says the United States is also a country that will stand against rising Islamophobia. And much of the chamber remained silent. But we as Muslims heard this loud and clear, that our elected officials are starting to agree that what was once marginal is now becoming mainstream, and that is Islamophobia. Islamophobia is defined as the unfounded or irrational fear towards Islam and Muslims that perpetuates negative stereotypes. But it's not just that. It's not just the irrational fear. There's actually a political objective, and that's the marginalization of Muslims from social, political, and civic life. There's an end goal here. And it's this irrationality that we talk about most often in the literature. For example, there's a certain talk show pundit on a certain cable TV channel that for many years, up until that election, would say that 40% of Muslims throughout the world support terrorism. Now, what does that mean if there's 1.6 billion Muslims in the world? That 640 million of them would have to be supporters of terrorism. But if you think the populations of these countries, Tunisia, 1 million, Morocco, 33, Libya, 6, Jordan, 6, Indonesia, 250 million, Malaysia, 30 million, Pakistan, 193 million. Add to that the 172 million Muslims in India, every single one of those people in every single one of those countries would have to be a supporter of terrorism for that one falsehood to be true. While we know those are all people who live and vote in democratic countries vying for democratic openness. And so it's this kind of falsehood that we need to highlight to say, what does this perpetuate? What does it propagate? We tend to think that this is a post 9/11 phenomenon. The question of, well, what about the Muslims, unfortunately, is not new. It's been with us. Think about the biography of the Prophet, the bestseller by Washington Irving in the 1840s, or Mark Twain's Innocents Abroad, talking about promoting stereotypes of Islam and Muslims. The first silent film, Rudolph Valentino's The Sheik. The entire film industry and its role. But what do we know about Muslim Americans, their legacy in this country, their contribution, and where they are today? On the East Coast where I live, 20,000 Muslim physicians on the front lines battling COVID. They are frontline workers, frontline responders, driving taxis, feeding people on the street, heading banks, hospitals, fixing teeth, paving roads. Muslim Americans, where I live in New York, both died on 9/11 and helped erect the first steel beam of One World Trade Center today. Muslim Americans have been part of the very fabric of this country. In 2007, a book written, Muslim Veterans of American Wars, chronicles how many Muslims fought and died for this country since the Revolutionary War. Yes, there were Muslims in the Revolutionary War who fought in the War of 1812 and the Civil War and World War I and World War II, Korea and Vietnam, the Gulf War, and even the current war on terror as Americans for America. Muslim scholars, Muslim women scholars, 20% of the women that were brought as slaves from Africa were Muslim women scholars who helped build this country while also preserving their Islamic identity and their language and their skills who are deemed illegal. We think about what this all means for the way we think about the legacy of Islam in America. Why is all this relevant? Do you remember when President Obama was candidate Obama and he was running for office? There was a question being circulated about his middle name and whether he was Muslim, which led to a deeper question of, can a Muslim be president? If you remember this time period. Now, this wasn't the first time this question was asked. In 1788, William Lancaster, a delegate in the North Carolina Convention to ratify the US Constitution, projects his fear about the future of this country. And he says, and I quote, "Let us remember, we're forming a government for millions not yet in existence. I do not have the art of divination in the course of 400 or 500 years. I don't know how it will work." He's very fearful about the future of the country and what the Constitution is going to lay out. He says, "I don't know who's going to occupy that chair." That chair he's talking about is the presidency of the United States. A Mohammedan might take it. A papist might fill it. I see nothing against it. What he's talking about in this great debate over the ratification of the Constitution of the United States is about the future of this country and whether a Muslim could be president. And what's unique about this moment is in US constitutional history, we're talking about Muslims being the symbol of the definition of what the future of America is going to look like. And so what this definition is, it was about the big litmus test of whether only a Protestant male could be president. And so this debate leads into a conclusion over days of fierce negotiation of that, no, indeed, there will be no religious litmus test, making the Federalists actually defend the future possibility of a Muslim president. Think about it. Why, in spite of everything that happens in this country, rising hate, do you see people, the average American, still come to the forefront and defend the average Muslim American? It's because this fundamentally goes against the fabric of American society, the ideals that this country was founded on. However, since the past couple of years have passed, we know what the data tells us. According to Gallup, 86% of Americans see Muslims in a negative light, or they have a negative association with the word Muslim. And that is worse than 1 week after 9/11. And this is because those very American values have come under attack. It's led to a country that's building identity on an exclusionary framework. And the inclusion of Muslims would actually mean to redefine what it is to be American. And so this can't happen. And this language continues to happen. But what does this all do to the average young Muslim American who constantly finds their identity constructed for them? When they are told, you are not us, then they're constantly reacting against frames that are inherently irrational and against the history of this country, against the legacy of Islam in America. But we're limited by those frames. But what we can't do is continue to define ourselves against those irrational frames. When we're stuck constructing our identities against irrational frames, we actually limit what it means to be Muslim and what it means to be American. And that means Islamophobic rhetoric has been working. When we think about what it means to be Muslim in America today, what it means to live with this legacy of contribution, we know that Gallup released a study back in 2009 and has renewed it a couple of times since then that finds, and it was groundbreaking at the time, that Muslim American women are the most highly educated, second most highly educated religious minority group, and that Muslim Americans are the most economically stable. Muslim Americans have the highest degree of economic gender parity, meaning Muslim women earn as much as Muslim men. But statistically speaking, Muslim Americans are productive, educated, and civic-minded individuals. And in their most recent study, Gallup finds that Muslim Americans are the staunchest opponents of violence, especially attacks on civilians, compared with every other religious minority subgroup. My colleague at the University of Seattle conducted a study that finds the more mosque-going you are, the more an individual attends mosque, the more they're in tune with what's happening in the community, the more civic-minded they become, which means there's a positive correlation between Muslims being engaged in their local mosque and Muslims being civically engaged as Americans. My former advisor at Princeton University, just down the road here, released a study that finds the more you understand the Quran, the more pro-justice you are, the more pro-justice for all. Meaning that Muslim Americans not just have a historic legacy, a constitutional defense, but also a long legacy in this country of civic-minded giving back that stems from their religion. But knowing all of this, how does it affect? When we think about the Islamophobia industry, the birth of the Islamophobia industry, $50 million a year to tarnish the image of Islam and Muslims as anti-West and anti-women and anti-Semitic and anti-justice and angry and anti-everything. What this means is that youth are constantly reacting to those irrational frames, that the odds are stacked against them, and that this industry, that's a marriage of pundits and financiers that benefit from the electoral cycle that ensures that those that run on fear make it into office. And unfortunately, we saw this happen in 2010 midterm election, 2012, 2014, and 2016. I have a study that tracks how hate speech through this industry actually allows elected officials from the rise of the Tea Party to run into office and win, and then those issues fall by the wayside. If you remember in 2010, there was a hysteria in New York around a so-called Ground Zero mosque, this monument that Muslims were building, a victory mosque. Neither was it a mosque or was it at Ground Zero, but the hysteria of that summer leading up to an election actually allowed elected officials running against that narrative to win their seats in office. And as soon as the election is over, what happens? The hysteria is over. 2 years later, we saw it with the anti-Sharia legislation to be passed in over 24 states. It was never about the legislation getting passed. It was about creating hysteria around Islam and Muslims that people running for office could ride it in. And that's what happened. And as soon as the election is over, there's no more talk about anti-Sharia legislation. What this means for us is that there are these frames that are illogical, that are full of fear, that young people instinctively find themselves responding against, shaping how they identify in this country. Because when you feel like you're told that you don't belong, you actually might start to believe it, even though you don't think you belong anywhere else but here. But one thing that has been shown to us in the past couple of years is all is not bleak. We have seen the explosion of people running for office, 93 people in the last election running for local, federal, and state office. We see the rise of young people moving into industries, trying to change the narrative. Youth becoming the great equalizers who are writing their own stories. They're WhatsApping and posting and tweeting and retweeting and Gchat, checking in and blogging and YouTubing and vlogging and all the other social media things that I don't know about. They're speaking a language that in many ways knows no bounds. And so when we talk about the Islamophobia industry, it is these people that are the great equalizers. And one fundamental project of the American Muslim institution is creating a space for young journalists, a platform, not just for them to come together, but for their voices to be amplified. Imagine young Muslim American journalists who are working on stories that transcend what are technically Muslim issues, but are issues that touch American lives, the American narrative, having their voices amplified. When we think about what this all does, this is the great equalizing against the Islamophobia industry. Supporting projects like this that amplify Muslim voices are actually the great equalizers against the $50 million a year Islamophobia industry that's grown to be $1 billion industry that is well-funded, unregulated, and continues to foment fear and anti-Muslim irrationality. When we think about what this ultimately does to the position of Muslim Americans know today that their story is tied to the story of everyone else, that their lives won't matter until there's justice for all lives, that we can't talk about a just society when it's just our community, but it means going into the inner cities, breaking the boundaries of privilege and saying that we can't fight for Muslim rights until we fight for the rights of all, for ending mass incarceration, equal education, access to affordable housing. that these stories that most young Muslim Americans are putting forth today are the great equalizers, and their narratives exist both within and outside of the Muslim community. And it's this generation, through projects put forth like this one by the American Muslim Institution to support Muslim American journalists, to give them a platform to amplify their voices, that says to this generation that when society says this generation is the lost generation or the millennial generation that's self-absorbed and taking selfies, that no, indeed, they are the great equalizers. That this professional class of young Muslim Americans is not just writing their stories, but they're ensuring that our stories are no longer written for us. As Muslims, we know that the Ummah is one body. And when one part of the body hurts, the entirety of humanity suffers, or so we're told in this relation. We think about the parts of the world that hurt, or the parts of the body. We tend to talk about Rwanda and Darfur and Ethiopia and the Congo and Kashmir, that these are the parts of the world that are hurting. And so we all feel their pain. But what if those are not the parts that are hurting? What if they're not the weak ones? What if it's us? What if it's the Muslim American community or privileged communities throughout the world that have access to power, that have a voice, that can construct their own narratives and are not doing it? When you think about giving to organizations like the American Muslim Institution and this project of amplifying voices, I want you to think about actually redefining the part that's in pain. Because what we also know in the Islamic tradition is pain that's felt throughout the body, love is also felt throughout the body. And what we need today are institutions, organizations like this that are amplifying Muslim voices so that the parts of the world that are hurting are heard, because our voices are there to ensure that the voiceless are heard. And so that's the kind of breaking the narrative of Islamophobia, breaking the Islamophobia industry that has in many ways tried to attack our sense of self-identity and how we belong in the United States, and saying, no, not in our name. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fahmy. That was an enlightening presentation, and I appreciate not only your support of AMI, but how you continue to uplift our community with facts and knowledge. Thanks for also agreeing to take a few questions from our audience. I could not help but write down some of the very important points that you mentioned, and I think are reiterating not only for myself, but also for the audience. Firstly, you touched on the role of hate speech in getting people elected. And then all of a sudden, when those individuals, especially you specifically mentioned the Tea Party, they get elected, they oftentimes forget about Sharia law. It seems like we've gone from a securitization lens to now a politicalization lens. It's a very frightening trend. But also, you were quite optimistic, and I really appreciated that. And I quote, you mentioned, youth become the great equalizers, and they are changing the narrative and writing their own story. Now I'd like to take a moment and take a little executive privilege and build on this idea of shaping narrative with the first question. Do you believe the media has a role in perpetuating Islamophobia? And also, how would you describe the media? I know there are quite a few definitions, and I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
That's a great question. I actually wrote a report on this for the Atlantic Council, and in a forthcoming publication, I'll expand on it more. What we've seen in the past decade is that the definition of media has shifted. If you remember when President Trump was elected and Steve Bannon went into the White House, you saw an elevation of what used to be marginal and fringe news organizations like Breitbart become mainstreamed. And what the industry has started to do is that once articles are published in these marginal, unfounded kind of claim organizations, they're elevated to media and then recycled throughout the media with quotes. And so you saw the definition of what is mainstream media come to envelope many marginal organizations. And so what this did, especially in the era of social media and retweeting and Facebook and WhatsApp WhatsApp mass messaging is that information is disseminated that is completely unfounded. And it's led to the mainstreaming of complete falsehoods. The industry, coupled with financiers that have political objectives, in many ways have taken advantage of this opening. We've seen a little bit of regulation in the past couple of months with, for example, social media platforms flagging certain articles for not being truthful. But if you think about what the effects are, the damage in many ways is already done. So absolutely the media has a responsibility, not just to talk to do their due diligence, but to ensure that the marginal stay marginal and that the mainstream remains mainstream. But on the other hand, when we talk about issues that touch the Muslim American communities, and you think about the pundits that come on TV, one study that was released finds that 89% of pundits are neither Muslim or tied to the Muslim community. And so there's almost a complicitness of not giving voice to those that are actually in the industry. But we've seen a shift in this. For example, on MSNBC, we have Ali Belshi, Mehdi Hassan, Ayman Mohideen, and also more people being hosted on different talk shows for expert analysis. So yes, in many ways, the media has a very large responsibility, but it's that intersection between media and those with political objectives and funding that have led to what used to be marginal to become mainstream in the past decade.
That's such an interesting concept, Dr. Fahmy. So what you're saying, it's the marriage of politicians and the media who have allowed the fringe to become the mainstream. And it happened right under our nose. Thanks. So at this time, I'd like to invite our next questionnaire. Anissa Johnson, you're up.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Fahmy. Thank you for speaking about such important issues. I wanted to ask, what suggestions, strategies do you have for Muslim Americans to work with other marginalized communities?
I think one of the challenges of, let's talk first for a few minutes about the Muslim American immigrant community, is being stuck in thinking that it's an immigrant community and that the legacy of Islam and Muslims remains, which leads to an erasure of the very long legacy of African American Islam in this country. And so in many ways, the first step is to recognize the long, rich history of Islam in this country and tying the two narratives to one another, because they're both important. And one should erase the other, which unfortunately has been the case. But on the other hand, when we think about what are Muslim issues are healthcare, ensuring that the poor are taken care of, that the hungry are fed, that there's equal access to education. In many ways, we haven't collectively as a community framed Muslim issues in that regard. And we think about Muslim issues being human issues, which essentially is what our faith tells us in the ethics of Islamic jurisprudence, is that that's where we need to get our kind of ethical foundation, is that again, Muslim issues are fundamentally tied to human issues, which are tied to alleviation of poverty, eradication of injustice, ensuring that everyone has equal access to education, and increasingly today, equal access to healthcare.
For the final question, we have Isa Basi. Go ahead, please.
While the theme of today's program is Islamophobia in America, what are you most optimistic about for our community?
That's a wonderful question. I'm most optimistic that the answer to a lot of what's happened in the past 5 years is that many more Muslims are running for office. If you think about this kind of fear nexus that started in the run-up to the 2016 election, it was almost creating a moment where it was like Muslims stay home, but the response was Muslims actually went out to the extent of running for office. And the segment that ran for office, 70% of those that ran for office were Muslim women, visibly Muslim women, who are saying, I'm going to reclaim my identity and take it to the highest levels of power. But also we saw an explosion of Muslims in the media and Muslim analysts, and Muslims actually changing, or investing their majors to study things like political science, things like journalism, but also moving in industries that, what does it mean to, for example, to work for the government in different venues and different agencies and being visibly Muslim, but simply because you're American and that you believe in these American ideals. And I think one of the beauties in this is that in spite of increasing hate crimes, it was also an opportunity to increase the conversation. And for example, here in the state of New Jersey, where I live, you saw an uptick in anti-Semitic hate crimes, as well as anti-Muslim hate crimes. But it also led to a conversation of how we collectively as communities can start to combat this. So what I'm most optimistic about, even in the era of increasing hate and white nationalism and the international white power movement, is that communities are coming together and saying, we're going to redefine what it means to be American, and it's going to include all of us, and we're going to harken back to those American ideals. But as the Muslim American community continues to mature and grow, elevating voices in industries that are traditionally not medicine and engineering, but moving forward in these really important power kind of move industries, I think is critical. But for me, again, the most refreshing response to the rising anti-Muslim hate in the era of Trump was how many Muslims ran for office and how many of them were women.
Do you feel, as a follow-up question, with all of those who ran for office, do you feel that with the added representation in the media of Muslims, be it male or female, that we have noticed a decrease or should I say less of that vitriol to American Muslims? Has it changed, or has it remained the same or gone down?
I mean, there's a couple of things that we're talking about, years of vitriol and the consequences of which we still don't know, we still can't measure, and it's going to take a very long time to even curtail that to go back to point zero. But think about what the presence of, let's say you simply work in a newsroom. Think about what the presence of a Muslim in a newsroom where you're doing fact checking and you're thinking, wait, I know that there's another take on this story. Who can I ask? And I can go out into the field and say, who are experts on this, who are also Muslims, who are studying and writing on this? Your simple presence in the newsroom offers an alternate point of view, an increased data point that actually strengthens the integrity of journalism. And so I think that is the most important thing. The presence of individuals at these tables where stories are written and decisions are made brings in a point of view that ensures that what is actually collected is closer to the truth.
Dr. Fahmy, thank you again for taking time from your busy schedule to speak to us. Thanks for sharing nuggets of information and wisdom. I hope everyone watching us from home can appreciate the important work, the work of engaging with those that are shaping the American Muslim narrative. You have highlighted some of the real challenges we are facing as a community, and that's years of cumulative battering, downplaying, and degrading of our community. But you've also mentioned by just having one person in the newsroom, it's enough to have an impact and change everything. Now imagine multiplying that by hundreds or even thousands. We are talking about real scale and change. Speaking of scale, I'd like to introduce those on the call to a couple of AMI board members. Firstly, founding member Shafiq Khan, who is the president and founding partner of Teach the World Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to scaling education through the use of digital technology. Prior to his nonprofit endeavors, Shafiq was a senior executive at Marriott International and was responsible for leading all of Marriott distribution channels, which generate 30 billion, that's with a B, in annual sales. Prior to Marriott International, Shafiq was working at US Airways and United, where he pioneered a series of groundbreaking initiatives which transformed airline distribution using digital technology. In addition to being on the board of AMI, Shafiq is also a board member of Montgomery County Muslim Foundation. I'd also like to take a moment and introduce AMI board member Rafiuddin Ahmed. He is the chairman of the board of Muslim Association of Virginia, one of the largest mosques in Virginia, but also one of the most politically active. He established the Political Affairs and Civic Engagement Committee, PACE, to educate all elected officials, regardless of their political party, about the Muslim American constituency that makes up Prince William County. Despite being only 12 to 13% of the population in Prince William County, Muslims make up 18% of the total vote. It's a testament to his team's efforts. He is also a founding member of the Virginia Council of Muslim Organizations, an umbrella organization for 10 Islamic centers from all over Northern Virginia. At this moment, I'd like to invite Shafiq Khan to get us started.
Thank you very much, Shahid. That was a wonderful speech by Dr. Dalia Fahmy, rich with a lot of information and facts and numbers that really gives us a true picture of where we stand at Muslim Americans. When we went through our special use permit, when we had our public hearing, we got overwhelming support from our neighbors. Even though the people who were opposing us, they went out and they put out door hangers, trying to encouraging our neighbors to vote against us, to come out and speak against us. But that backfired. A lot of, I would say about 40% of the people that showed up and spoke in our favor were people of other faith, and they all spoke well. So there's a power in showing our neighbors, educating them what Islam is. And that education component is very powerful, Shafiq Bhai. But Shafiq Bhai, I would like to ask you, I am sure we are not the only success story throughout the United States. There are many other centers who are doing similar or better things. However, these stories do not get shared at national basis.
Yes.
How can we tell our stories to average Americans, our neighbors, our colleagues? How can we educate them? How can we show them what we're doing?
So you have a really good story, Rafi Saab. It is really, in essence, a story of successfully changing the narrative from a negative to a positive one and getting some very practical results for the community. But the thing is, doing it in a single place and replicating it nationally is hard. So the only way to change the narrative in a massive way, which is what we need, is through mainstream media. Now, that may seem really daunting, but I absolutely believe that there are reasons, there are ways that it can be done. And I have some strong reasons to believe that it can be done. So one, when we hired Fenton at AMI, Fenton is a very nationally known PR company. They did a wonderful job advising us, by the way. But one of the crucial findings that resonated the most with me and that gives me the most hope was that, yes, there is an Islamophobia industry. Yes, there is rampant Islamophobia. But, and this is the most important part, of the people who have a bad perception of Muslims, only 5% are committed Islamophobes. The other 95% are misguided and misinformed. And that is our real problem. They're being fed the wrong narrative by the Islamophobia industry only because we're missing in action and we're not there to present the right narrative. So I think that's the imperative that is upon us, that we have to be there to change the narrative, to present our narrative. And again, while it may seem daunting, others have succeeded in changing negative narratives into positive ones. The Irish are one example. I can remember 3 Irish presidents, from JFK to Reagan to now Biden, all of whom have Irish American extraction. And there was a time when there would be signs in cities, in mainstream cities like New York, where they'd say, Irish need not apply. They changed the narrative. The Jewish community is probably the best example, and we can learn from them. We should learn from them. They give us models to emulate, and that's one of the things that we at AMI want to do. And then finally, I think we are better positioned than ever to change the narrative today through mainstream media. First, we have many prominent and successful Muslims in media. Just think about Hassan Minhaj. 10 years ago, you didn't have anybody like that. Asif Mandvi, Wajahat Ali, Mehdi Hassan, Amna Nawaz, Asma Khalid and Leila Fadl of NPR, Aisha Siddiqui of CBS 60 Minutes. And the list is very long. There are many more. So at this point, I do believe that we have a cadre of prominent, successful Muslims in media that can be mobilized by us and influence mainstream media. The other thing that's happening right now is that the mainstream media is far more sensitized today with BLM, with all the other things that have been happening on racial, ethnic, and religious issues. And so the likelihood that they are going to be shifting is also very strong, and I feel very positive about that. And then the other thing is perhaps one of the more important ones, and that is we had a very powerful Islamophobe in the White House until January. And the fact that we now have Biden there has had a massive impact, I believe. And it's, again, setting us for success. So this is what AMI is trying to do. We're trying to use all our media assets, our people, our networks, all the folks that AMI is seeking to bring into journalism and bring into mainstream media, and then also bring the right information to mainstream media with the networks we create with Islamic scholars and the right people who are not going to misguide, who don't have a specific Islamophobia agenda. So we can only do this if we are committed, if we resource AMI appropriately, and really get behind it. And only we can do it.
Wonderful ideas how we can elevate the Muslim community. So there was a lot of information that was shared earlier that the Islamophobia industry spends $50 million a year spreading lies just to make us look bad and to spread hate against Muslims. I have a question for the viewers. How much are you willing to spend to make sure that we combat Islamophobia, that we change the narrative of Muslim Americans, we change the future of our children, where they feel safe going to school, that they're not going to be bullied. Our women, when they're walking the streets or at the grocery store wearing hijab, will they be feeling safer in the future? So I have a question for you. Are you willing to help us raise $30,000 today? I need at least 30 people who can do $1,000 each. Or I need 3 people who can do $10,000 each. But no matter what amount you can donate today, I need each and every one of us to make a commitment that they will support us on a monthly basis. Whether if it's $30, $50, $100, or $500, whatever level that you can afford to give. Please help us help you change the future for the better, not only for us, but for our future generations. Thank you.
I will take it to heart, and I will be the first donor responding to your appeal. I will pledge $5,000. At the end of the day, the only question I had to ask myself was, if it isn't us, who? And I think I'd like everybody to ask themselves that question based on your appeal. Thank you very much.
Takbir. Jazakallah khairan, brother Shafiq. How many of you are ready to match his donation? Can I get 10 people that can match his donation? So please think about it and do not leave him be there by himself. Please join Brother Shafiq in making a pledge now. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Rafi and Shafiq Saab. I really appreciate your sentiments and also for encouraging us to contribute. This Ramadan, I encourage everyone to pledge monthly and support AMI's mission. And if Rafi and Shafiq Saab were not enough, I'm happy to invite Dr. Muzammil Siddiqui to make a pitch also for us. For those of you unfamiliar with him, he was the former president of ISNA. He is currently the president of the Academy of Judaic and Christian and Islamic Values at the University of California in Los Angeles. He has participated in many inter-religious dialogues. He has spoken out at the World Assembly of the World Council of Churches in Vancouver, Canada, and the World Assembly of Religions in the Vatican, the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. He participated in many seminars organized by the National Council of Churches and the National Council of Christians and Jews in the United States. In September 2001, on the National Day of Prayer and Remembrance, he was invited by President George Bush to lead a Muslim prayer at the Interfaith Prayer Service at the Washington National Cathedral. In September 2006, he was again invited by President Bush to lead an interfaith prayer on the 5th anniversary of 9/11 at Ground Zero in New York. Dr. Siddiqui, we're looking forward to having you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. Ramadan Mubarak to all of you and your families. May Allah accept your fast, your acts of devotion, and all the other good deeds that you do during this month. Ramadan is a great opportunity to receive Allah's blessings and mercy. The doors of heaven are wide open, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases the reward of those who do the good deeds. Every act, every good deed is multiplied 70 times or 700 times, even more. So Ramadan is a time of worship, fasting, but also it is a time of charity. Our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was a very charitable person, very generous person, always, but especially in the month of Ramadan, his generosity had no limit. It is mentioned in one of the hadiths, it was like blowing wind. Everyone receiving from his charity, from his kindness. It is the month of al-muasat, caring and kindness towards others. So as you help the poor and the needy with your zakat, it is good to give some sadaqat as well, some extra charity, and this should be given to some worthy institutions that are doing the work for good causes. I would like to draw your attention to AMI, American Muslim Institution, that has been serving the community for the last 6 years. Its work is basically in the area of combating Islamophobia, racism, bigotry, and also emphasizing justice and equality and human rights for all people. Its work is through outreach programs with the elected officials, as well as media and interfaith leaders. So it is an important work and it needs support. I want to urge you to support AMI among other institutions that you support during this time. Consider it with your support and with your generous donations. May God bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, Dr. Siddiqui. We're fortunate to have an endorsement from someone like you, the former president of ISNA, here today, supporting our cause. Yes, we are prioritizing Islamophobia, as you've mentioned. And as our previous speaker, Dr. Dalia Fahmy mentioned, more and more we're seeing Islamophobia seep into schools and into our children's education. And we're seeing the impacts of it more and more. And for this reason, I'd like to invite one of our founding board members to discuss his motivations for establishing AMI. For those of you unfamiliar with Sajid Ajmeri, he is a practicing corporate attorney in Washington, D.C. metro area, where he has lived since 2005. He attended NYU Law School and worked as an associate at a major New York City law firm between 1994 and 2005. Mr. Ajmeri grew up in London, UK, and read modern history as an undergrad at the University of Oxford, Exeter College. Mr. Ajmeri, very nice to have you.
Hi, Shahid. It's so great to be with you again, and thank you for that kind introduction. And I guess I'd like to say that I came to AMI 5 years ago, and probably, I mean, it's wonderful because in AMI we brought together people from many different walks of life, and I'm really proud to be able to contribute to AMI. I think I've really enjoyed the company of our board members and executives and working staff. Some of them, you know, are senior people in the Muslim community and have made great contributions over the years. I felt like I still have many more contributions to make at this point. And I'm sure there are other people out there like myself who are a little younger, who may not have children yet, or who just have young children. My children right now are age 13 and 10, and they're in the local school systems. And so I hear from them about how Muslims are portrayed in general in the school system and so on. And, you know, at times it is troubling. And I don't think we've been helped in the last 4 or 5 years under the previous administration with some of the remarks that were made by the president and so on in the past. So to me, it was very, very important that our children have an opportunity to be raised in an environment where Islam is seen as one of the great world religions, similar to Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and others, and that people see the positive contributions that Muslims have made to American society, and they are vast. And I'm so proud of the work that AMI has been doing to bring that out into the public and bring it portrayed accurately to the American public.
You know, there are so many other existing Muslim American organizations throughout the country. Was there something in particular that you thought, this is why we need AMI?
Yes, Shahid, absolutely. You know, I think there are plenty of organizations that focus on the religious side of things. I think that there are some organizations that also focus a little bit on the political aspects. But I thought that for us at AMI, where, you know, we've started here in the Washington, D.C. area, but we're expanding, you know, we have some particular leaders in the media and political sphere who can have great influence. And for me, you know, coming from, as a corporate lawyer, coming from business, finance, and industry, I know how important it is how people are presented and portrayed, how they portray themselves. And so to me, the media aspect was always critical. And I saw that there was a need there because, unfortunately, as many people here may probably know, you know, there are frequent negative media portrayals of Muslims in America. and there are frequent there's a lot of misinformation out there about what Islam stands for and how Muslims live their lives. So I absolutely thought it was very important to focus on media.
Fantastic. And would you mind sharing with others perhaps your number one motivation why you contribute to AMI every year?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, I thought very hard about where my skills and talents could be put to the best use. And to me, given my education and background, I felt that I could play a very significant part in improving the image of Muslims in America and focusing on exactly how we're presented, whether it's a written presentation, whether it's a verbal or oral presentation, whether it's in the events that you hold, Shahid, with other personalities in the media and with politicians and other people who have significant influence. In all those settings, I thought that my contribution could be strongest to try to present the most positive image of Muslims in America.
Thank you so much, Sajid. Do you have any last words for someone who is at the fence of making a contribution at this day in Ramadan?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I think that in Ramadan, people are focused on fasting and also on charity. And I think that this is also one aspect of charity. I remember as a child, my father always said, and he was a very hard-working man, and I'm the youngest of 7 children. So he spent much of his life working very hard, and he did not actually have as much time as he would like for prayer. But he always said it was the work that he did with his family for his children that was his ibadah, his obedience. So to me, this is another aspect that we can do, even those of us who are busy professionals focused on moving forward with our careers, advancing our lives. This is one easy way that we can help contribute towards the improvement of Muslims and their lives in America. You can make a donation, whether it's large, whether it's small, whether it's a small monthly contribution. You can make sure that we improve the environment for Muslims and for ourselves and our children and grandchildren.
Thank you so much, Sajid. And just to double down on his point, especially during this month of charity, we're requesting everyone to consider making a monthly donation to AMI, no matter how small or big. We can have an impact and change the perception of Muslims if we're all in it together. Thank you, Sajid.
Thank you so much.
Today, from our board members, from myself, or our speakers like Dr. Fahmy and Dr. Al-Gawari and Dr. Siddiqui, we really hope that you consider contributing to AMI. It is so important for us to continue the important work of fighting Islamophobia and changing the narrative on the American Muslim community. I mean, one of the things Dr. Fahmy mentioned today, which is staggering, that in a Gallup survey of Americans, 84% of them had negative perceptions of Muslims. If you don't work together, if we don't work together, how are we going to combat these perceptions? And to take it home, I'm going to invite AMI board members, Rafiuddin Ahmed and Ambassador Islam Siddiqui, to make a case in case you have not yet contributed to this successful program. Rafi Bhai, go ahead.
Welcome everyone again. Now it's going to be my job to ask you to help us. Inshallah, I will be using some of the great information that Dr. Fahmy has already provided. Inshallah, I'm going to provide us a very quick recap. 89% of the pundits speaking on Islam are not Muslims or have no ties to Muslim community. That was 89% actually. 86% of Americans see Muslims in negative light or have a negative association with the word Muslim, according to the Gallup. 48% of Muslims have faced discrimination. So we've also heard from one of our board members that we have examples of other American communities who have suffered the same Islamophobia, but in a different term that we're facing right now. For example, The Irish Americans. We all heard, as Brother Shafiq said, the term no Irish need apply. We also are aware of to the plight of the Jewish Americans. Brothers and sisters, it will require investment of time and money from our community for changing the paradigm of Muslims, Americans. We also heard from Sister Dahlia that we as Muslim Americans have access to power. We have a voice. And we can construct our own narrative. The question is, are we doing it? So far, the answer is no. We have not really made a dent. So I'm going to ask you to donate generously today. Help us help you. Your donations today can also be considered as a sadaqah, like the Imam Siddiqui said. And your donation today will have benefits for next generations to come. I'm going to quote from Surah Baqarah, verse 261. And it says, the example of those who spend their wealth in the cause of Allah is that of a grain that sprouts into 7 ears, each bearing 100 grains, and Allah multiplies the reward even more to whomever He wills. So it's all about your heart, brothers and sisters. For Allah is all bountiful, all knowing. And our Imams all mentioned, gave us the example of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where he was the most generous during the month of Ramadan. So imagine the multiplication of every dollar that you donate today, and it's in the hands of Allah how much reward He gives you, whether if it's 7%, 700, or there's no limit in the bounty of Allah. He's very merciful. And inshallah, you donate today with a good intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us all. So I need, as earlier, one of our board members made a pledge of $5,000. I need 4 more individuals who can commit to $5,000 each. And brothers and sisters, it's very easy. You don't have to have $5,000 in cash right now, okay? You can make a pledge to donate today over a timer period. Now, on our link, you have an option and you have the ability to commit to a monthly payment, and you can stop whenever you want. So if you want to donate $5,000 and you want to donate $500 a month for 10 months, all you have to do in the comments area, leave us instructions that you want to donate $5,000 over 10 payments. And we will deduct $500 each month from your bank account, from your credit card that you give us for the over 10 months. If you want to do 12 months, entirely up to you. So brothers and sisters, so can I get 4 people to make a commitment to change the narrative of Islam and change the status of Muslim Americans in our country? Make it so where our kids, when they're going to school, they're not afraid of identifying themselves as Muslims because they're afraid of being bullied. As Dr. Fani also shared, that there's a high number of Muslim kids who are getting bullied in school, in the primary school system. So it is in our hand. The best way that we can make a change is by investing in organizations such as AMI and giving us the tools to be able to conduct the work that we've already been doing. And there's many people who have already shared with you the good work that AMI is doing right now. So brothers and sisters, I'm going to, because of the time, I'm going to ask you to pledge. If you cannot do $5,000, if you can do $2,500, you can do $100, or you can do $1,000, or $500, or even $100. Whatever you can afford, our donation bar will be updated as you make your pledges. So on the comments in the chat, you can put down that you're willing to donate X amount, and inshallah, we'll update our bar for our goal. And inshallah, we also need your continued support of monthly donation, whatever you can afford. If you can afford only $30 a month, brothers and sisters, that's $1 a day. That's less than what it costs for you to go and buy a cup of coffee nowadays, right? If you donate $50 a month, that's $1.67 a day. That's like buying a coffee at 7-Eleven nowadays. You can do $100 a month. That's $3.33 a day. That's the price of a regular coffee at Starbucks. Or you can do $500 a month. And that's $16.60 a day. That's what it costs to eat lunch nowadays. So brothers and sisters, we have to make a commitment. We have to sacrifice what is most dear to us, which is our hard-earned money. And it will take sacrifices for us to be able to change the situation of Muslims in America. So the question now is, are we up to it? So brothers and sisters, as Dr. Dalia mentioned, that the Islamophobia industry is spending $50 million a year. And they're doing that to tarnish the image of Islam and perpetuate hate against Muslims. And this hysteria is helping them being able to elect the type of candidates that they want to put in place. So Ambassador Siddiqui, I have a question for you. How badly does AMI need the support of our viewers?
So Rafi, I think you have made a very powerful appeal for donations and for the cause. We are working for the improvement in terms of the image of Muslims and Islam in America. I think it's a job which has to be shared responsibility of all of us. And I want to remind everyone listening to us here this afternoon, we're all volunteers. We are working for the same cause, which you have heard from Dr. Fahmy, Dr. Muzammil Siddiqui, and now from Rafi Ahmed. So I think my job is a lot easier just to let you know that we can do this work because we are positioned in Washington, D.C. with contacts all around the country. So I think what I want to quote is saying, which is very appropriate. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. So brothers and sisters, I think if you want to go far, and that is not for our sake, for the sake of our children and their children and future generations of Muslims in America. I think in order for them to feel proud to be American, they have to be part of this society. I want to use example which I have seen in the Darul Noor organization, which Brother Rafi is one of the executive directors and also ex-president. They do a block party every fall where they in their parking lot. Will you believe they invite about 4,000 neighbors, both non-Muslims and Muslims, and they serve halal, kosher, hot dogs and hamburgers, cooking food and providing free. This is the best promotion of Muslims and Islam in terms of sharing your blessings together and I think they have created an environment. This kind of model has to be expanded to other parts of the country. Other example I want to mention, Montgomery County Muslim Foundation, where Tufail Ahmed is leading an effort, where they're providing thousands of pounds of food during this COVID crisis. So point I'm making here that Muslims all around the country are doing this, but the media is not telling. So what AMI, where we figure out in this, that we want to bring on one platform American Muslim media and leverage other reporters from mainstream. And this is a task which requires your support. And I think with that powerful appeal you have heard, we are asking you to donate whatever you can, because we can do this together and go far for the sake of our children and their future generations of Muslims in America.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Siddiqui. And those are very good examples. And I'll give you another example at the masjid where I belong to, Darul Noor Islamic Community Center in Virginia. We are also serving hot meals every day, and it's open to people of all faith. We're serving 600 meals on daily basis. And, you know, I wish, like you mentioned, Ambassador Siddiqui, I wish there was media who was there to highlight, you know, these kind of activities that the Muslims are doing. And we need a better representation in the media. And, you know, as I had mentioned before, 89% of the people who experts, so-called expert who come and speak about Islam in the media right now are people of other faith, and they have no ties to the Muslim community. So, you know, Ambassador Siddiqui, our board chairman, Brother Aqilur Rahman, also pledged $1,000. So, alhamdulillah. And brothers and sisters, we are past the halfway point. We are at $16,000 right now. I need every one of you to please make a pledge during this month of Ramadan. Help us carry out the good work that we're doing. Help us elevate us so we can do better, inshallah, and help represent you as your family and change the narrative of Islam, inshallah. Ambassador Siddiqui, would you like to add something?
So, Brother Rafi, I think one of the things which I really admire about this board, they not only work as volunteers, they have been generous with their donations all throughout these 5 years. And using the same example, I would also like to donate $1,000 towards this fundraising. But I want to say something which is very important. I think what we are doing here is actually something which we know we need to do. And I've been in government most of my life and into serving 2 presidents in senior positions. I think you have to be on the table, not on the menu. So I believe that what we are doing, and I'm using my experience and all of us people who have been business, scientists, and all of the board, they're using their experience in terms of generating a positive image of Muslims in America. Believe me, if we were doing this thing in all across the country and we're using the media, our Muslim media, to publicize how many thousands pounds of food we have distributed or hot meals we have served during the COVID year, it'll be amazing because we are generous people. But you know what? The media is not telling. So I think I'm urging you to be generous so that we can continue the work we are doing.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Siddiqui. You know, our hearts are in our Islamic centers. And there was a statistics that was shared with me a long time ago, that majority of the donations that American people, American Muslim make are for charity work and also to masajid. You know, but that's very good that I'm also the president of Darul Noor Islamic Center Masjid, so I'm never going to ask people not to donate towards masjid. But it's very important to make sure that our community is represented in a right manner. So we need to really balance our donations. We need to make sure that we are funding our masajid. We need to make sure that we are donating and feeding the hungry as we are commanded to do. But then we also need to make an investment into the future of our children to make sure that we leave this country, we leave our country and our community when we go away, when we pass away, better than what we found it. Okay? We need to make sure that we're making a dent into Islamophobia. We need to make sure that Muslims are respected. We need to make sure that we are treated equally. We need to make sure the right-wing nujabs are not standing in front of our mosque carrying an AK-47 or AR-15, which is happening a lot in a lot of the Islamic centers. And let me tell you, a lot of those people who are doing that, they're actually good people. They just lack the information, or they're being fed the wrong information by this $50 million a year, Islamophobia industry. So let us do our job. And alhamdulillah, I'm looking at the figure right now. We are at almost $18,000. Brothers and sisters, we need $12 more thousand to hit our goal of raising $30,000. I need 12 people who can say, I will give $1,000 and I will spread it over 12 months. Okay? And that's less than $100 a month. Okay? So brothers and sisters, there's nothing that comes easy, and we all have to make sacrifices. And I guess one of the hardest sacrifice is to parting with our money, right? So please, I ask you, make that sacrifice during this blessed month of Ramadan and earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also, if I told you that if you invest $1 right now, it will get multiplied by 700 times, would you want to do that? We're always worrying about our IRA and to make sure our retirement funding is secure. What about our permanent abode after the Akhirah? Are we working towards securing a good abode in Jannah? And this is right now the Black Friday that we all wait for, the sales. This is the month of Ramadan. This is our, I don't like to use the word Black Friday, but this is our Black Friday. So please take advantage of, investing into your akhirah. So we're almost at $20,000, brother. So I need 10 more brothers or sisters. I don't want to leave sisters behind. Some of our sisters are more generous than our brothers. So sisters, if you're here, if you're listening to me, please outdo our brothers. Step up, let us know what your intentions are, and please donate. Ambassador Siddiqui, you wanted to add something.
So I think only thing I can say, what we are doing here this afternoon is a small, actually peanuts when it comes to the work which is at hand, asking for $30,000. If people should know that in order to do the work we are doing in Washington, D.C., I think that many of the other communities, whether it be Filipino Americans or Hindu Americans or other organizations I work with, they have budgets of $5 million. They have 30 people, or some of them have about 5 or 6 people. We have one executive director in Shahid Rahman. He's the only paid employee of the organization. And with the help of volunteers, all of us, the president, executive director, works with us. But what point I'm making is, this is peanuts for the work which is being done as volunteers on your behalf. If you require the services, my services and all the board members, others, you'll be paying like $500,000 is coming free to you because we believe in building future for our future generation for the Muslim community in America.
Thank you, Ambassador Siddiqui. So we are at, we still need 10 brothers or sisters to donate $1,000 each, or if we can get 20 brothers and sisters who can say, I will do $500. And again, like I said, it's very easy. You can spread it over 10 months, 1 year, 6 months, whatever is comfortable for you. But we all need to make sure that we contribute and we do our part. And I like to ask, Imam Johari, one of my very good friend, he had a famous phrase: you donate until it hurts. You donate until it hurts. It's very simple. If you have, some, disposable income, if you have $500 that you have allotted for these kind of purposes, and you can very comfortably say, okay, I'm going to donate, my limit is 500, and I'm going to donate only 500. What Imam Johari means by donating until it hurts is you going out of your comfort zone. If you only have a budget for $500 and you believe in the work that AMI is doing, and you say, you know what, I'm going to double my donation. So if you have already donated $500, I'm using that as an example, but you believe in the work that AMI is doing, then donate until it hurts. Double your donation. Donate again, even if you cannot double it. Even if you can, do half of it, please do so, because the work that we are doing is very important. And alhamdulillah, we are at $20,000. We are 2/3 of the way where we need to be. So we don't have too much time, brothers and sisters. I just want to say that even if we, our program ends and we are not able to hit our goal, but I'm hoping that we can hit our goal before we conclude our program. You can always donate. You can go on our website and you can make a donation and, continue. And also, I would like to ask everyone to also please donate on a monthly basis, whatever it is, brothers and sisters. Even $1 a day, which is $30 a month, or $50 a month, which is only $1.67 a day. So whatever you can comfortably, please help us help you. So Brother Shahid, would you like to give us an update where we are?
Sure, Rafi Bhai. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Fantastic. So with everybody's support, we reached $20,000. And I think everyone has the ability to donate. I mean, we still have 20 more days in Ramadan, and the link will still be valid. This is a Ramadan campaign. So with everybody's support in the next 20 days, inshallah, we will hit our target of $30,000.
Okay, inshallah. So thank you very much, Shahid. So with that, we have gone beyond our time that we had wanted to conclude this program. I want to thank everyone who have attended. I'd like to thank all of those speakers who spoke and gave us this valuable knowledge to know where we are, what is the status of Muslims in America. And I especially like to thank everyone who has donated during this blessed month of Ramadan. And I encourage all of you to please continue to do so. With that, inshallah, we will conclude. I make dua that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our fastings. May Allah accept all of our duas. May Allah accept all of our charity during this month of Ramadan. May Allah protect all of us from this pandemic that has befall on us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give Jannah to those who have passed away from this pandemic. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give shafa'ah to those who are suffering from this pandemic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala support those who have lost their job because of this pandemic. May Allah help those who have their earning power has decreased during this pandemic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala support and protect our country. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us good Americans so we can contribute in making this country a better country. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين عملوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاك الله خيرا everyone. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.